You are a soldier. In a war you did not know you were fighting. It is the most intimate and the most brutal war of all. It is fought not on foreign fields, but in your living room, in your bedroom, inside the deepest chambers of your own heart. It is the war of the sexes. You have been told that this conflict, the resentment between men and women, the confusion, the betrayal, the pain, is a sociological phenomenon, a product of history, or economics, or culture. This is a superficial diagnosis for a spiritual disease. The war of the sexes is not a social problem. It is the most visible, painful, and personal battlefield of a great metaphysical war. It is where the sickness of the modern world becomes flesh. To understand this conflict, to find the path to peace, you must first understand the sacred principles that have been corrupted. You must remember the nature of the gods that are sleeping within you. Before the sickness, there was the harmony. All of creation, all of reality, is born from the interplay of two fundamental impersonal forces. These are not social roles. They are the twin pillars of existence. The first is the divine masculine. This is the principle of structure, of order, and of will. It is the force that separates, that defines, that gives form to the formless. It is the vector, the blade, the focused beam of light that penetrates the darkness. Its nature is to build, to create systems, to establish boundaries, and to project consciousness outward with purpose and direction. In its highest uncorrupted expression, it is sovereignty, honor, stability, and the protective strength of the wise king. It is the Sky Father, providing the unbreakable firmament under which life can safely unfold. The second is the divine feminine. This is the principle of potential, of creativity, and of unity. It is the infinite, undifferentiated source from which all things emerge. It is the ocean, the womb, the fertile darkness, the creative chaos. Its nature is to be, to feel, to connect, and to nurture. It is the boundless wellspring of life, of intuition, of emotion. In its highest expression, it is life-giving power, unconditional love, and profound, silent wisdom. It is the Earth Mother, the source of all substance.
The great secret of the ancients, the central tenet of all true mystery schools, is that neither principle is complete without the other. The masculine without the feminine is a sterile, dead structure, a perfect blueprint with no materials, a cage with nothing inside. The feminine without the masculine is boundless, formless chaos, an infinite ocean with no shores, a wellspring of power with no direction. Healthy creation, a healthy world, a healthy soul, occurs only when these two forces are in a state of sacred union. When the divine masculine provides a wise and loving structure for the infinite creative potential of the divine feminine to flow into and to manifest through. This harmony is our birthright. It is the Eden from which we have been exiled. The modern world is not this harmony. The modern world is the story of how both of these sacred principles were wounded, perverted, and turned into monstrous pathological caricatures of themselves.
The dominant pathology of the modern era is a perversion of the masculine principle. It is the shadow of the king, the managerial tyrant. This corrupted archetype was born alongside the managerial system, the soulless machine of the modern state and corporation. It is rooted in a deep, systemic fear of the chaotic, intuitive, and uncontrollable nature of the true feminine, both in the world and within its own psyche. This is what happens when the divine masculine becomes sick. Structure becomes rigid, soulless, control. Order becomes lifeless, bureaucracy. Will becomes domination and exploitation. And so it projects this internal chaos outward as an obsessive need for external control. It creates rigid systems for others because it has no true structure within. It measures spreadsheets because it cannot face the unquantifiable nature of its own soul. It demands obedience because it is a slave to its own unresolved trauma. It rationalizes this brutal, life-denying control as strength, as logic, as invulnerability. This is the dead, sterile cage that has been built for all of us.
But a cage always produces a reaction. Second pathological archetype, the wounded feminine, did not arise in a vacuum. It is the counter-scream, the inevitable, hysterical reaction to the arison of the managerial tyrant. Having been subjected to a deadening, false structure, it concludes that all structure is oppression. Having been ruled by a false, tyrannical logic, it concludes that all logic is a weapon. This is what happens when the divine feminine becomes sick. Infinite potential becomes boundless grievous, eternal leaven bland, eternal victimhood. Unity becomes enforced, tribal collectivism. Intuition becomes unfiltered, hysterical emotion. And life-giving creativity becomes deconstruction, and the dissolution of all meaning. Its primary weapon is chaos. It seeks to tear down, to dissolve, to deconstruct. It attacks the very concept of boundaries, the distinction between man and woman, between beauty and ugliness, between excellence and mediocrity, between truth and narrative. All are declared to be oppressive constructs that must be destroyed. But in its rage, it becomes the very thing it professes to hate. It becomes obsessed with power. It seeks to control speech and thought. It creates its own rigid, dogmatic orthodoxies, and it excommunicates all heretics. It becomes a new kind of managerial tyrant, draped in the language of liberation. So we are trapped, in a feedback loop of pathology. The deadening control of the pathological masculine creates the chaotic rage of the pathological feminine, and that rage validates the masculine's belief that the feminine is a force that must be controlled. This war cannot be won, because it is being fought by two phantom armies, each defined by the other's wounds. The only path to peace, the only way to end this war, is not through victory. It is through unilateral disarmament. It requires individuals, sovereign individuals, to reject these caricatures and consciously cultivate the healthy, integrated archetypes within themselves.
This is the great reclamation. This is the praxis.
For the men listening, the path is to reject the sterile shell of the managerial automaton. It is to do the terrifying work of integrating your own inner feminine, to learn to feel again, to connect with your intuition, to face your own darkness without projecting it onto the world. Only then can you embody the true divine masculine, the sovereign, honorable, and protective king who creates wise structures that allow life to flourish. For the women listening, the path is to reject the poison of perpetual victimhood and chaotic rage. It is to do the difficult work of integrating your own inner masculine, to learn to set your own boundaries, to apply logic and discernment to your powerful emotions, to build as well as to deconstruct. Only then can you embody the true divine feminine, the self-possessed, life-giving queen who wields her infinite creative power with wisdom and with grace. This is the work. It is the hardest work there is, and you must do it alone. But in doing so, you create the possibility for a new kind of union, not a union of two wounded halves, but a union of two sovereign wholes. The war of the sexes is a symptom of a world that has forgotten what it means to be human. The only way to win is to remember.